החולים האינדונזי.
Yeah, and that's the situation in Gaza for Christmas. All funded by the peace president. And Israel now is saying it doesn't want to be buying weapons from the United States. So it's going to put $110 billion into its own independent arms industry. $110 billion is pretty much what the United States has granted it in aid, I think, over the next couple of years, or promised it in aid. So it's going to put that into an arms industry of its own. Now you look at what's happening around the world. I spoke on the last show, I talked about how Israel has essentially got a fifth column in all of our countries. All of these terror attacks that are being staged around the world, like the terror attack we just saw in Bondi, Australia, the only people that benefit from that is Israel. Israel is the only state that has benefited from any terror attacks we've seen around the world since the 9/11 attacks, like since World War II even. The only people who benefited from World War II as well. A lot of people have been arguing, saying, oh, you know, a lot of the stuff we saw in Bondi was fake, you know. There's always this crew that takes that as their default view. And I've asked all of them, to anybody that's commented and said that, I said, can you explain to me why it would be in Israel's best interests to fake these attacks? Because when you really look at what's going on, I mean, everything they've done over the last couple of years, like they've made the genocide in Gaza so public. They've done everything perfectly wrong, to the letter, in order to create as much anti-Semitism around the world as they can. And now, because there hasn't been enough blowback, I mean, there's been a lot of blowback against Israel, but as far as Israel is concerned, there's not enough blowback against Jews. So in all the stuff they're doing, all of their rhetoric that you see online, there's so many posts saying, and the politicians are saying this now as well, the Zionist politicians are saying anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. They're trying to bring the two together, like Zionism is Judaism, and there's millions of Jews out there who say it isn't. They want nothing to do with Israel, nothing to do with what Israel's doing. And they don't want to go to Israel, they don't want to populate that state because they think it's disgusting what it's doing. But Israel needs them, and it needs them to feel threatened in their own countries. So it's made this genocide as public as possible so that there'll be this surge in anti-Semitism around the world, done deliberately, because, you know, everything I talked about on the last report, I mean, Israel wants to kickstart World War III. They want to have all this finalised. They want it over the next year, over the next 12 to 18 months. They want as much war as possible. They want the war between East and West. And they need to bolster their forces. They need to get all the Jews around the world to feel like they're in danger, so they'll all migrate to Israel. Because Israel intends to annex Jordan, annex Lebanon, you know, annex most of Syria, parts of Iraq, the top of Saudi Arabia, the Sinai, and Egypt as far west as the Nile. That's the plan for Greater Israel, and they need the numbers to do it. So they've created a situation where there's going to be a lot of blowback against Israel, and they've gone out of their way to merge and blur the line between Zionism and Judaism. The media's really helped, the politicians have really helped. But there hasn't been enough blowback. There haven't been enough Jews feeling threatened and feeling like they need to move to Israel. So then they go and stage attacks like the Bondi attack. And the reason they would actually kill people is because they want to kill people. They need to kill people within the Jewish community so that the Jewish community moves into a state of genuine fear and has to move back to Israel. They will force them to move back to Israel. The Jews that are doing this in order to put this whole fear into the Jewish community, and in order to make it appear that anti-Semitism is rising, so there will be new legislation put in place in all of our countries to remove more of our rights from us. Israel will get its own police force, and at the same time it's creating its own military industry. So you've got this state that's about to expand itself massively into greater Israel and is doing a massive build-up in arms while it's putting police forces in Western countries in order to guard its citizens. Can you see what's happening here, folks? And this is the same state that has been flooding migrants into Western countries for years, and much more in recent years. America has displaced something like 40 million people in wars since the 9/11 attacks. It's gone into so many countries and decimated so many countries, all at the request of Israel, because Israel has claimed all these countries are threatening us. When it was Israel who carried out the 9/11 attacks, convinced America to go and bomb Muslim countries, which displaced 40 million people minimum, and has now sent them into Western countries so that Israel can claim Muslims are invading Western countries. Now it's staging attacks against its own citizens so it can put police forces in all your countries, and it is spending $110 billion creating an arms industry for a massive build-up of arms while it is expanding into greater Israel. Can you see what's happening here? And I showed you on the last video report that they want their temple built. They want to anoint their new Messiah by October the 2nd, it was, in 2027. So they need to kick-start this war and get all of this stuff going on between East and West before then. And that's what's going on here, folks. That's what's going on. And they're keeping you distracted with all sorts of stuff. And hasn't there been a lot of stuff that's happened in the last couple of weeks? I mean, it's been ridiculous. Like, it's only been 5 days since I put out a video. And there's so much stuff that's happened. Like, all this Charlie Kirk stuff that's come out. Like, the whole Amfest thing with, like, for a start, they've got Nicki Minaj there. Erica Kirk interviewing Nicki Minaj. Charlie Kirk hated Nicki Minaj. And she drops the line that the assassin, J.D. Vance.
And you have amazing role models like the assassin, J.D. Vance, our vice president. And when I say that...
Candace Owens has kind of fallen off the rails. Like I said, she should never have done that whole thing, the closed door meeting with Erica Kirk. That was just ridiculous. But like I said, I didn't really trust Candace anyway. I only saw 3 or 4 of her episodes because my friend Rachel was actually watching Candace and was a big fan and was kind of forcing, saying, no, you got to watch. And it was good to watch them. And like I said, I couldn't find any fault with anything she was saying, but I still didn't trust her. And when she did that thing with, closed doors with Erica Kirk, I think a lot of her fan base saw through her as well. But the good thing, like I said, is that she's caused a lot of young people to ask questions now. A lot of young people, they've gone that far with Candace, and now they're stepping off and they're going with other things, and they're finding out new stuff, and they're doing the research for themselves, and that's a really good thing. So there is this huge shift happening, folks. There's a huge shift in consciousness happening. And the more people wake up, the more they try to lock us down, which just succeeds in waking more people up. That's the way it works. Beautiful here in Acapulco, folks. Absolutely beautiful. But yeah, things are going to go to the next level, and you're going to see more stuff going on in Australia as well. There was rabbis threatening the Australian government the other day, saying, if you don't introduce new anti-Semitism laws, then you're going to see more attacks. Yeah, of course, because they're going to stage them. And, this threat is happening in America as well. And even Benjamin Netanyahu has basically made that threat to all Western governments. Any government that supports Palestine is saying you're going to see terror attacks in your country. Well, how would he know that? Well, it's because he and his government are the ones who are going to stage them. It's insane what they've been able to get away with. You know, so they've spent the last, like since the 9/11 attacks, they kick-started this whole thing. They used those attacks to decimate the Arab world, flood the West with migrants, and get massive amounts of funding by pretending they had a little pet terrorist force next to them, which they run amongst. They run the whole thing. They've done that, and now they've got enough money to start their own arms industry, expand into Greater Israel, and set themselves up as kings of the world. They are decimating European culture through mass migration, just basically conquering them through numbers, through migrants, destroying any trace of what Europe once was. Doing this right across Europe, doing it in England and Ireland. They are basically in control of the United States, and they're destroying that just by letting the place turn into rack and ruin while they drain the economy for their wars. And now they think, okay, well, we've got everything we need. We don't need the Palestinians here anymore. We can just slaughter them, genocide them. We control the media. We control the legal system worldwide. They can find us guilty of war crimes if they want. We'll just ignore them and act indignant, and they'll go away. Now, all of this riding off the back of the Holocaust, which you're not allowed to talk about, which anybody who's really looked into will soon find out didn't happen. You know, this whole thing has been a long-going plan, folks. Since before World War One, they've been playing this. I mean, if you really trace back what really happened with World War One and World War Two, again, there's a book that I've mentioned many times before by Mike King called The Bad War, which traces events back to the middle of the 1800s, and you can see what laid the foundation for World War One and World War Two. And when you see what's happened since then, and then what's happened since the 9/11 attacks, you can see what the plan has always been, and you think of the motto, by way of deception we shall do war, and you can see how all this has been done.